Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Gróska here in Vatnsmýri, to the conference Iceland Travel Tech, Nordic Edition. Eins og þið heyrið þá fer þessi viðburður hér fram á ensku, enda umfjöldunarefni þess eðlis, alþjóðlegt, hefur að gera með alþjóðlega tækni og íslenska ferðamannabransan, og hér eru margir erlendir fyrirlesarar sem að koma hér fram, og umræður og þess háttar eru ætlaðar bæði Íslendingum og erlendum aðilum, og þess vegna höfum við þetta á þessu sameiginlega máli sem við skiljum ensku. Það íslenski ferðaklassin og ferðamálastofa sem að standa að þessum viðburði hér í Grósku. I'm switching back to English now. Just wanted to tell you about the way we want to have this today. So, as I was just saying in Icelandic, it is the Icelandic Tourism Cluster and the Icelandic Tourist Board that are jointly operating this event here in Gróska in Vatnsmýri. I was just writing down with the Icelandic Tourism Cluster. I took careful note of the fact that it's the Icelandic Tourism Cluster, not the Icelandic Tourist Cluster, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago that would have been more appropriate. Icelandic tourism was just a cluster of tourists all over the place. We're doing things more and more intelligently, I think, and with more strategy because of the help of very creative people, creative minds, strategists that are really putting a lot of effort into this industry. My name is Bergur Ebbi. I will be your moderator here and host today. And we are basically going to talk about the future. We're going to talk about technology and all of this in relation to the travel industry. And I think this is a very appropriate time to have such a discussion. This is the third time this is done, but for this particular edition of the event, I think we are all very eager to listen of strategies of the future, especially in relation to tech. Because for the past year, we have obviously, like of all the industries, at least in this country, none has been as affected by the global pandemic, maybe as the tourist industry, but we've also been very affected by technology as well. The pandemic has not only been a matter of health concerns, which obviously is the greatest and biggest story at the time, but maybe in the future, when we look back at this time, this will actually be the time when we learned a lot about technology, and technology took over various aspects of our societies. Hopefully, with ourselves a little bit behind the driver's wheel yet, but technology played a very important part in our society, in operating intelligence, teaching our children. People were using cloud services and mobile solutions for various tasks that we could not even have dreamt of using before the pandemic. And it might sound as a contradiction even to think of, oh, is this really going to help the tourist industry a whole lot? Because what all this tech and this kind of victory of cloud computing, bringing people closer together with digital platforms, at first glance you would think, no, that's maybe not good at all for people traveling because it just gets rid of traveling. But the fact is that I think all of these advancements in technology just make for a smarter way to think of tourism. And I know it sounds like a cliche, but this is actually an opportunity to think of sustainable tourism. What we want to achieve, think about quality over quantity, and make this a really smart and intelligent industry, which of course, I must say, it already is, thanks to the people that have been building up this industry for the last years. And maybe the last year has also given us a chance to reflect and look back at what has been built up, because unfortunately, a few things that have been built up got destroyed, at least temporarily, during the pandemic. And it made us think of the real value of these things, what we want to keep, and how we want to continue building it. I'm very glad to see all of you here. I think it's an event to just have people coming together. And of course, very happy to have all the people joining online as well. But I'm just very happy that there are people together in a room discussing the subject of technology. Because I think that one of the main challenges of our times is a very subtle but very distinct fear that people have of technology. It's actually been around for generations, but during these times we have now of, some people refer to as the fourth industrial revolution, where the machines are stealing our jobs, or whatever, how you want to phrase it, but with the trends of automation, with the trends of artificial intelligence, and as we know, how we are more and more sinking into our screens and kind of living and experiencing our whole lives through our screens, I think we sometimes feel we are not completely in control of the development. But I can tell you, the reason I'm happy that we're here together and we're going to talk about technology and the future, and in this particular case in relation to the travel industry, is because coming together and discuss technology is not only the best way to get rid of that fear, it's the only way to get rid of that fear. People are supposed to talk about technology, because what we are lacking sometimes when we are overwhelmed with the speed of development, what we're lacking are just names, stories, narratives, faces of all this development. Nobody really likes to use technology just because they have to, because the computer says so. But behind all the programming, there are people and there is thought, and we should never forget that our biggest tool is our language and our human relations, and we have to talk about these things. So I think this is, of course, a very joyful event we're having here today, because it's about the future, and we have nothing but future ahead of us in terms of the travel industry. The people working in that industry have been through a very hard time, and there's nothing but a reason to be optimistic about the future now. We have nothing but future ahead of us. But it's not only just a joyful event, it's also a very necessary and important event. And without further ado, I want to introduce the first speaker today, because we have great speakers today. We have people developing very interesting programs and all over the world that have to do with technology and the travel industry. And the first one is about a particular topic that I would maybe say that I have fear for it, but I'm overwhelmed by it. I don't completely grasp it and understand it, and it's blockchain technology. I just don't understand how much influence it's going to have, but it has to do with using programming and computer power to create, I guess, some sort of identity and trust, which we have used other tools of our society to do for centuries, and now we're transforming that into the digital realm. And that's a big transformation, which I'm much of a believer in, but I just don't truly understand it, and that's why an input from an expert is very valuable. And we have with us on a live link Mr. Anthony Day, who's a partner in IBM's UK and Ireland blockchain team. How are you doing? Can you hear us well here from Gróska in Reykjavík, Anthony?
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you, Berger, very much for the introduction. Thank you also for giving the 101 for blockchain before I even got started. I really appreciate that.
So the stage is yours.
I've only got a half an hour, so I don't know how much of the background of blockchain I'm going to be able to cover in this short period of time, but if anybody wants to reach out, connect with me, I'm very happy to have that conversation anytime, any place. What I'm going to talk about today over the next 30 minutes is three particular topics that I think are particularly important for this industry, for anybody in Iceland and anybody around the world. I'm going to talk about health, I'm going to talk about travel, and I'm going to talk about sustainability. And how that pertains to blockchain, or the relevance of blockchain technology. I spent the last 5 years of my career focused on multi-party systems, developing technology in collaboration with multiple organizations, developing technology together, not in one individual company's house, making small incremental improvements, transforming entire industries together, or entire supply chains or value chains together with technology platforms and data. There's not an awful lot more to it than that. Yes, there are some complications under the hood, but largely for those in the audience, when it comes to blockchain, it's about data, it's about working together, and it's about transformation. And so I'm going to give you guys some examples today of what I think that looks like for you, or what it could look like for you, why it's relevant, why it's interesting for the tourism industry specifically, and more broadly for Iceland. So let's get into it. I'm going to share my slides. Bear with me for a second. So, can everybody see a slide saying every business is now a health business? Harry, excellent. Thank you so much. So, whether we like it or not, over the last 18 months, there has been one major overarching proof that we've required, and that is proof that we are low risk, or proof of our health. Whether that be proof of recovery, whether that be proof of a test, whether it be proof of vaccination, particularly in terms of travel and immigration, but in a number of different industries that find it difficult to socially distance, that have had to continue operating over the last 18 months, mission critical industries. This has been a major consideration for every business out there. Do we need to think about our own testing protocol? How do we manage data? How do we manage the privacy? How do we think about GDPR or HIPAA or any of the regulations regarding the health data of our staff or our customers? Right? And how do we make sure that the credentials of people who we're verifying are legitimate? And as we move forward out of the pandemic, as we start seeing different government and private sector solutions around health credentials popping up, how are we going to integrate that into our day-to-day, into our processes, into booking, into physical processes when we're outdoors? How does that fit with mobility, with any of the other technologies we have at our disposal? And I've been working over the past 18 months with governments, airlines, the travel industry, booking agents, travel technology providers, every stakeholder you can imagine, and everybody is equally concerned, confused, trying to figure out what's next. And I don't have the complete answer for you, I'm afraid, but it's an illustration of what people are saying and what this means for companies. So one data point to think about here is, about 12 months ago, people were saying, how are we going to manage the return to work? Obviously, social distancing will become a part of it. 95% of people surveyed said that. 78, 79% said that PPE is going to continue to be a thing. Yes, it probably is, masks, etc. 65% said we need to manage symptoms checking or testing on a regular basis, maybe even daily, as part of our day-to-day operations. Right? And the logistics around that, around the technology, around the cost, not insignificant. Fast forward 12 months later, and in the next survey we took, we said as many as 55% of employers are looking at incentivizing staff to be vaccinated. Now, this is a particularly emotive topic, and you'll see people on both sides of the fence around vaccination, around testing, and so on. And that's not something we're necessarily going to discuss here, but the role of vaccinations, the role of proving that you've been vaccinated or not, what are the journeys for those who are unable to be vaccinated, who choose not to be vaccinated? How do we make sure that we achieve equity or equality in those customers, those citizens, those colleagues and employees who are wanting to still come to work, to experience travel, to do the things they were always doing before? Critical considerations for every organization at this point in time. And so IBM, along with a number of different others out there, have been developing technology to address this. The concept of a digital health passport, digital health pass, is probably not unfamiliar to this audience. And for those wanting to understand what's the role of blockchain, let's start with the three participants involved. You've got the individual themselves, me, the citizen, the passenger, the employee, the colleague, the pilot, whoever it might be. I want to hold my particular credentials so that I can verify that I am who I say I am and that I have an up-to-date credential. I have a relationship with an issuer, what we call an issuer, a health provider who will be conducting a test, a vaccination, whatever it might be. And there will be a contract between those two parties. There'll be data exchange between those two parties. And from that issuer, we want to create a credential, a digital ticket, a digital proof that I have been vaccinated, tested, whatever it might be, and that will be exchanged with the individual. That individual then has the responsibility to verify wherever it is required, either by policy or by company obligation. I then need to go verify with another third party that I am who I say I am and that I have an up-to-date credential. So I either share it in advance or I share it face-to-face, scan a mobile QR code, scan a document, whatever it might be. And that verifier then needs to look up, is this person who they say they are? That could either be with a physical proof or it could be with a digital proof. And then, is that credential issued by somebody that we recognize or that we trust? And where the blockchain platform, where the technology underneath comes, is the encryption the private key management and the trust that allows a verifier to look up and say, this hospital, this healthcare provider, this government issued my credentials, I can trust them, and no other information is exchanged. No private information, no PII is exchanged on the platform. It only remains with the individual on their device or on a portal, and with the issuer where you have a contract for a particular piece of healthcare interaction. And that's it. And then scaling it out into a number of different journeys. Now, the complication here is, yes, you have to onboard issuers. It's then also about how do we make sure that verifiers can recognize the multiple different types of passport that are out there. Here's what it looks like. So you may have one of these yourself. You may have a digital or a physical version of it, but ultimately you'll see a test record. You'll see information there saying, this is my COVID test result, or this is my vaccination, second dose, first dose. Here's a QR code that I can share or scan for a period of time. I can revoke that permission to scan for a period of time, or I can close the phone and revoke it physically if I choose to. On the other side, on the credential check side, the point here is to provide as little information that is personal or none at all to the checker, to the verifier, saying this credential hasn't expired, it's valid, it's not been revoked, the platform can tell us these things, it's a recognized and trusted signature, and it meets the criteria that I've set for somebody gaining access onto the flight, into this building, into this facility. And that's about it. But here comes the complication. And here's the interesting thing for the travel industry is that over the next 2, 3, 4 months, we're going to see a proliferation of these solutions. Private sector solutions that are already in place. IBM's Digital Health Pass, Clear, Accredify, from all regions of the world. We're going to see industry-specific solutions. IATA, maybe specific sports or industry-specific solutions. We're going to see a number of government solutions specific to either the European Union or individual nation states who will be issuing credentials to their citizens. How do all of these different passports, scans, credentials get accepted? And this is the part that IBM plays. Yes, we know a little bit about developing a health pass because we have our own, but the critical part here is how do we integrate that into booking processes, ticketing processes, and so on, so that we can ensure that it's streamlined, it's easy, it's simple. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of the context of the what, a little bit as to why. The how, we'll probably have to leave for another day for the sake of time. But as you're thinking through this, and as I said, health passports are a very, very emotive topic. Everybody has a different perspective on these things. We must think about, firstly, standards. And there's a number of different working groups that are out there that IBM and others are part of around standards for data, standards for credential management. What are the types of credential? How do we scan them? How do we issue them? Interoperability, as I talked about, between multiple parties. Digital enablement, how do we integrate this into the existing digital experience customers are used to experiencing, or how do we upgrade or modify that experience so that we can do it seamlessly? Because what we don't want in the middle of a pandemic is hundreds of thousands of people queuing up in airports, at venues, at events, waiting to scan, waiting to verify, because large queues of people gathering around in a pandemic is generally what we're trying to avoid. Also, those delays are going to create a terrible customer experience. Inclusivity and accessibility. There are non-digital journeys. There are less digitally aware people out there who need to be supported. And how do we make sure that happens? Public-private collaboration, we're seeing a lot of that, and that has been turbocharged in the last 18 months. That governments typically don't deliver technology at speed, which is where the private sector is supportive, but governments and the public sector do drive the policy. So how can we get those two sides working hand in hand to deliver policy and technology at pace? And also, supported by the science, the policy and epidemiology that supports the decision-making as to when or why we want to use these sorts of things, because ultimately nobody wants to see digital credentials being used for going and buying milk and bread. It's just not the sort of technology we need in that level of invasiveness. So a start to this part of the conversation. Next, sustainability. And I realize this is a very big flip from health passports to sustainability, but stick with me. And my thesis here, sustainability is a data problem. Many people say that the term data is the new oil. I see data as the new fuel. Data fuels visibility. Data fuels transparency. Data fuels interest. What they say is what gets measured gets managed. The more information we can provide around at a granular level, the sustainability of our operations, whether that be in travel, tourism, logistics, manufacturing, the more visibility we have as to how bad it really is, the sooner we can get a handle on the problem. This is the great acceleration. And if you look at these different graphs on the left-hand side, you can see the socioeconomic trends, the trends that humans are impacting on the world. World population, water use, urban population, paper production, fertilizer consumption, transportation. all growing exponentially. And then on the right-hand side, you look at the Earth system trends. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, nitrous oxide, surface temperature, ocean acidification, also growing at an exponential rate. And here is our problem. As businesses, as organizations, we're quite used to managing things in a linear fashion. If I look forward to 2050, for example, which is a year in the distance that most organizations, many have set as their target for achieving net zero, you can say, okay, that's 30 years from now or 29 years from now. I can imagine how old am I going to be in 29 years' time? How old are my kids going to be? I can kind of see forward to that. It's also sufficiently far away that I don't have to worry about it too much. But linear curves are easy for the human brain to understand. Exponential curves, though, and this is the rate at which these negative patterns are happening on our planet, 10 years forward, for example, growing at an exponential rate is not 10, it's 1,024. So the impact of what was happening in 1 year versus what's happening in 10 years at a linear pace versus an exponential pace is quite prolific. You then fast forward those 30 years, rather than going in incremental steps, you don't end up at 30 years from now, you end up at over 1 billion times the impact, or 1 billion times the number you first started with in 2021. So exponential curves are particularly dangerous because trying to approach them in a linear fashion will not come close to driving the size of change that we need to impact. We need to look at an exponential threat with technologies and exponential capabilities that can create change at a much, much greater rate. Which leads me back to the point I made at the beginning about working together. Climate change and sustainability are not going to be addressed by individual corporations improving 1 or 2% every year. It is about radical transformation. And where it comes to data, supply chains, and systems, this is where blockchain comes in. Blockchain is a data platform that connects to multiple different parties across any industry, any supply chain, any value chain, that allows you to get real-time, relevant, secure, privacy-preserving information of whatever you need to know about the provenance of a good, its location, its state, its temperature. Any parties can join the system. It can be permissioned so that only regulators can see certain information. Manufacturers may not be allowed to see certain information from their suppliers because it might affect procurements in the future, but that information is still required from a compliance perspective. We can join anybody together on these sorts of systems and create different applications, different ways of looking at problems, different workflows, different ways of delivering experiences, or different ways of sharing information. And on top of that, then we can provide certain functionality to businesses or to customers that will allow them to act differently around traceability, around certifications and proof that something has been sustainably managed or delivered. Insights, intelligence, information. Imagine an artificial intelligence that can optimize the way that your products are delivered to minimize carbon footprint rather than to maximize profit, which is one of the metrics that's typically used. And we can open this up to the open source community. The one thing that blockchain is particularly good at is engaging with the open source community to develop new functionality, new features, new integrations. So what do we do with that? Everyone's aware of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, 17 places to go and look for issues, opportunities, collaborations. I'll give you an even better one, Project Drawdown, which looks at a list of about the top 100 ways in which we can reduce atmospheric CO2. And within this, you look at some of the issues here. You look at materials, you look at reduced waste, more use of plant-based diet, education, use of electricity or renewable electricity, silvopasture, different ways of conducting farming activity. If we're able to identify the current position against any of these metrics today, across an entire supply chain or across an entire country, we can track that, we can measure it, we can get granular data from all of the different parties involved. We can understand the scale of the problem, we can start to drive some change. And we must do that with a mantra of people, planet, and profit. Historically, capitalism's been very good at the bottom one, but we must make sure that in everything we do, we can also do that sustainably from a planet perspective and also from an ethical and a social perspective. This is the triple bottom line that organizations must now be measured against. And so here's some ideas of how we can do it. Starting with IBM Food Trust. Started through collaborations with large retailers like Walmart and Carrefour to trace back the origin of food produce so that we can manage recalls more efficiently or food safety more efficiently. But actually, if you look down the list here, there's a number of different other outcomes you can use in that platform for. Food safety, freshness, reduced waste, focus on sustainable sourcing to drive efficiencies and also brand trust and engagement with consumers. One platform, multiple applications. Right? Same thing with supply chains. If you have a data platform that underpins the activity that you do, you can use that for managing applications around reducing plastics, reducing carbon output, waste management, a number of different applications, all sitting on the same underlying technology, which is where this is super powerful. We work with an organization called Food Cloud, who are looking at extending the life of food produce and distributing that to charitable groups. This is specifically for the UK, but a number of other geographies as well. And how do we make more of the food that we have? But also, as the food gets towards the end of its life, we need to make sure that it is safe for those who are consuming it. We don't want to create health problems just by reducing waste. Working with organizations like Yara to maximize the yield from agriculture by sharing data across farming, weather, satellite data, supply chain data, demand data. How do we understand better and make more out of the available scarce land that we have by being smarter? IBM's Net Zero platform, which allows organizations to look across a dashboard of different particular metrics, whether that be emissions, whether that be energy usage, electricity usage across their operations, and be able to allow management to have greater understanding of the scale of the problem and match and track their performance against certain metrics, and allow their banks, their financiers, and the market to do the same. And working with organizations like Plastic Bank, or in Japan, Mitsui, or Asahi Kasei, to manage circularity or encourage circularity, increase the reuse of the materials that they produce in terms of particularly plastic or others, whether that be lithium-ion batteries, whether that be raw materials. How do we make sure that we're using less or recycling more, and that that's more transparent in the way that we do things? So, some ideas for you. A quick guide on innovation before I get into the final point around public-private partnerships. Everybody should know what one of these is. This is the humble vegetable peeler. Friend of every student out there, well, maybe not every student's big on vegetables, but about 10, 15 years ago, a company called Oxo Good Grips came out and said, we are going to radically transform the sector. We are going to take the humble vegetable peeler and we are going to make it sharper, darker, rubberized for your enjoyment, easier to grip, etc., etc. We are going to transform and completely change the game. And to an extent, they sold a lot of products. It is an excellent vegetable peeler, but what the consumers actually want is peeled vegetables. So as you're thinking about transforming the industry sectors, you're transforming travel, transforming hospitality, whatever it might be, do not start with the reference point of a slightly improved rubberized vegetable peeler. Start with understanding what is the actual impact, the actual change we want to drive, and what would need to be true for us to get there. Blockchain in and of itself will not save the world. This is the source of the particular phrase that goes against my podcast and YouTube channel, but ultimately it is a tool in the hands of people who get to use it, as is every technology. We will change the world if we use those capabilities, if we work together, if we bring innovations and we focus on driving the actual change that we want, as opposed to incremental improvements that won't get us anywhere near up the exponential curve that we're focusing on. So it's about collaboration. As you leave this lecture theatre today, don't think about what can I do in my company, think about what can I do in my industry. Who could I bring together to drive change? A point that I've taken from a number of different episodes, and this is the shameless plug of my podcast, my apologies for that, but the point is, through having conversations with a number of different stakeholders in the likes of Brazil, Switzerland, India, Malta, Israel, Singapore, where transformation, particularly around multi-party systems and blockchain, is particularly successful is where we see public-private partnerships at scale. The likes of the Dutch Blockchain Coalition, where they have a permanent function to drive innovation between government and the private sector. No project is ever allowed to be initiated without government and at least one private sector member and without at least one startup. And they have funding behind that. Blockchain Israel, a working group specifically to bring those multiple parties together. Two Tokens looking at the token economy in the Netherlands, or Tribe, an accelerator in Singapore, that again is designed to specifically seek out, fund, and accelerate those innovative businesses that are going to drive change in particular sectors. In these cases, specifically focused on blockchain technology, but it could be any other. The problems are coming from government, they're coming from the private sector, and they're being driven through, facilitated, and supported by those organizations. At this point, we don't need any more technology evangelists. My job is not about telling you how amazing blockchain is. My job is about helping you understand how to collaborate, how to work together, and how to address problems, and that it is possible. We need more influencers. We need those in the room to think about collaboration models, to look at some of the technologies that are out there and try and figure out what's the best available to be able to drive the transformations that we need. And in healthcare, in travel, in tourism, in hospitality, in logistics, in manufacturing, in fisheries, Blockchain is a technology that is driving transformation, that is driving transparency, that's driving visibility, that's driving change. And so we're very open to sharing our thoughts with you guys. We're very open to collaboration in any extent. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you very much, Anthony. Quick question, if you're still with us. Are you still with us here? Can you hear
I
us?
am still with you.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for your talk. Quick question. So a lot of people tuning in here are maybe represent medium or even small-sized companies in the Icelandic travel industry. I guess this is such a big transformation, blockchain technology. They're waiting for the bigger entities to do something, the government. And you're talking about this has to be a cooperative initiative between the government and the private sector. Like, what could be the first step to make use of blockchain technology for a small Icelandic travel company?
So first thing I would say is don't start with blockchain. Start with the problem. Start thinking about what can we change that involves everybody to work together. In thinking about it that way, you might end up with a solution that requires a multi-party platform, whether that be relating to loyalty or sustainability or visibility of vehicle usage or land usage or footfall, or maybe something related to payments between those parties, or there's a number of different processes or systems where we're saying, how do we take 50% of the carbon out of domestic travel in Iceland? How would we do that? How would we incentivize it? Here's where the government comes in. And how would we measure it? If we start with those questions, we start with some great ideation and getting the parties in the room. And if we can get the triple bottom line of benefit for people, benefit for planet, and also we can do that with profit, that's where you're going to start driving some of these initiatives. The likes of the Dutch Blockchain Coalition or Tribe in Singapore were government initiated. So they knew they had an imperative or drive to innovate. I hope that's still the same in Iceland. I hope there's still a focus towards technology investment and driving innovation. For the industry, though, there are existing forums, there are existing working groups where these sorts of questions can be asked, where these sorts of proposals can be put together, and it can be on one sheet of white paper. It doesn't have to be too sophisticated.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time and your talk. Anthony Day from IBM. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
So I think at least we can say we have a good start here, because here we are joint. This is a joint initiative between the private and the public sector, as you know, jointly held by the Icelandic Tourist Board and the Icelandic Tourism Cluster, which represents the private sector. But we're going to continue. We have a very good guest with us here in the house, Robin Phaedra Mitchell. She is the owner of Hybrid Hospitality and the Iceland Market Manager for Benchmarking Alliance. And her talk is called Activity Trends and Benchmarking in Tourism. The floor is yours, Robin.
Thank you. Hello there, welcome. I have to definitely repeat that it's very nice to see faces and be in person. It's been a while. Today I wanted to talk to you about benchmarking, and first I wanted to start with a little story about why I got involved in benchmarking. The tools that Benchmarking Alliance offers are used for both public and private sector when you're trying to measure all kinds of results on how your efforts have actually worked in the outcomes and the success or the failures of your business. When I was in the hotel industry for about 10 years here in Iceland, and as well as before, these types of reports we used every day. And we used them in a way to, see where our position was against the market. We could see our position against competitors. We could see as well where certain areas in our own business internally were doing well. So I could see if Wednesdays were maybe my best-selling day and I had some issues on Tuesdays. I could see if my staff in the F&B department of a hotel was really achieving the upselling goals that were set by the management team. So the tools that we work with are, multi-use for internal operations, for hotels, for activities, for restaurants, really any sort of stakeholders that are in tourism, as well as are very useful, and I use them today. I work quite a bit with bringing foreign investors into, Iceland or developing projects. And this is something that is already, people are very versed in these type of benchmarking reports where this one company is in 10 countries around Europe. We have over 1,000 partners that are contributing data. And just to repeat a little bit with what Anthony was saying is that it really does take cooperation, and it takes a lot of effort to, give quality data for what you want to get out of it. So with that, I will give you a little bit more insight to what we do at Benchmarking Alliance. We're a third-party web-based system. We were developed in Sweden by revenue managers as well as lawyers who are specialists in competition law. And what they wanted to do is find a way that you could put together data suppliers, data buyers, and all industry stakeholders onto the same platform and the same page, looking at numbers for their market, for different comp sets, for different needs in their business. It started right just with hotels and what we call Hotel Trends and Hotel Trends Plus, where you can measure KPI data, so key performance indicators of how businesses have been performing. In the years that came, we found demands on a lot of our markets that they wanted more. They wanted to see how the restaurants were performing. They wanted to see the 12-month forecast, not just for their own internal business, but how the 12-month forecast looked at for the market or looked at for certain comp sets, so they could really start to make plans and fill gaps in the business, as well as to maximize the business that they did have coming in. In different markets, we've really reacted to what the demands are. So activity trends is something we developed for Iceland and also for Finland, where you have a lot of pre-packaged tours that are taking a lot of these adventures, that you're taking, maybe super jeep tours and volcano tours and golden circle tours. So we have the capabilities not just to track for, hotels and restaurants. We can also track bus companies. We can track super jeep companies, we can track attractions. There's no limit. Spa trends as well was developed in Finland, but we see great potential with all of the spas that have been added to the market in Iceland, as well as, for example, camping trends. We have, as I mentioned, 10 countries that are currently working with us, and we continue to increase. We had about 1,000 partners, but since COVID, we've actually managed to add another 300 of companies who really maybe didn't see the value in looking at these numbers on a whole. They were a small operation and suddenly have decided, wow, we really need to look at our own position, but also where do we stack up against the market? One of the things is that we deliver performance data. So we're looking at numbers that have already gone through your business, and we work as a complementary partner to rate shoppers, to OTAs, and all of those that are on the market that you can read of what's for sale and what's available on the market. We actually take it one step further, and we get our data reported by operators in the business. So this is something that's going through their PMS system, through their point of sale system, and going into a third-party system where the data is never isolated. So if, for example, you were a company working with benchmarking, you can see your own data and you can see a minimum of 4 in a comp set. And there's a lot of sort of competitive frames around this to make sure that every one of our partners knows that the data is never being isolated. Your data is your data, but you can stack it against different markets and comp sets that you create yourself. A lot of what we do is very much built on trust. We couldn't do the job we did if we didn't have the trust of our partners and our system, knowing that this data is solely used for developing destinations, developing businesses, and also just keeping a pulse on how you're doing against your partners or against your competitive sets. One of the things that we do is, and I mentioned that we're very complementary to the OTA Insight reports and all of the different things, the PMS reports we work with, Hagstover reports, MyLabor, then we contribute information and we try and share market data so we're all looking at the same pixels. It's really important that we're not just looking at a flooded market of, data coming from all sources, but that we're actually computing this data and really involving the people who are operating in the business. How it works is that we need a minimum of 5 competitors in each region. Right now in Iceland, we have just under 70 who are reporting at this moment. Even during COVID times, that number has sort of fluctuated up and down through the years. Mostly in the accommodations, and to be honest, a lot of it is in the greater Reykjavík area. And that's one thing that we look to develop is the smaller regions. We'd love to see, for example, in Iceland, how the south is stacked up against the north, and not just looking at the amount of guests, but what are they spending? What is their average daily rate in any given market? What are the extra sales? How is that area or that business doing at upselling and really, achieving the goals? What it takes, and I'll show you the system just briefly after, is it takes 2 minutes commitment from a company a day. We do connect to a lot of sort of PMS systems, the property management systems. We can do an API FTP connection very easily. But one thing that's very important is that companies themselves really read their data and make sure that what they're providing is quality and providing a real picture into the market so we can all use it collectively to work together. The ones that really are working on it right now and using this data are not just stakeholders that are in tourism or not just operators in tourism. We're using these reports all the time with the banks, with real estate companies who are renegotiating rental agreements. We have other partners who are maybe competitive to Iceland who are looking at this. So we work with all of the, visit offices or the meeting and events offices. We work with a lot of travel offices just for looking at 12-month pickup so they can see where they should start to push business in to certain regions, certain dates. And yeah, this is something that we take very seriously when we work with our partners in providing the best data that we can, not only for one region, but when we look at comparison regions. So now I think I will just open the system and show you a little bit. But this is just one example I wanted to pull from 2019. And this is why it's so important that we collect more data contributors. The growth that has come in Iceland, we went through a stage of hypergrowth. And with the new volcano erupting and with the limelight sort of shining on Iceland, we don't seem to have a problem getting people back, but we need to make sure that we get them back at a sustainable level and that we see what's happening in each region. So for example, in South Iceland in 2015, there were 1,400 hotel rooms, give or take. In 2019, that number had increased dramatically. The hotels that we see right now and why we can't share data for example, the south of Iceland, is because they're all from generally the same companies, and this goes right against our competition guidelines. So for every area in Iceland, we are collecting data, and yet we can't show it because we need more partners who are giving their information into this one platform. If I could just go onto the system here. So just to give a view of how it works, I decided to take Bergen as an example for today. I will show you some Icelandic statistics, but we work on an overview dashboard where you can slice and dice your data absolutely how you'd like to see it. So for example, in just the hotel trends, we can give you a report of your RevPAR, your revenue per available room. We can give you average daily rate, occupancy, sold rooms. When we go into Trends Plus, we can give you your extra revenue. So if I just look, for example, and I want to know what's the RevPAR for Bergen boutique hotels in the last weeks. And your benchmark is always going to be the red. So you can see here that you're really doing well on some days, but your benchmark is doing much higher when they're competing, and this would be the minimum of 4 that they're competing against. If I wanted to look into how is this hotel doing at selling extra revenue, so they're not doing great maybe at the room rates, they're selling too low, their occupancy, maybe they're not selling enough, but right away it's very clear someone's doing well at upselling in this property in particular against the comp set. So all of these types of information can be used, and sometimes you'll see, maybe the person that's working on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays is doing a great job at selling, and the ones on the weekdays need a little bit of extra training, need a little bit of extra incentive to bring up the numbers. We also track events. So this is something that's very big for us to see in destinations. Are certain festivals working? And a very good example for Iceland was the Airwaves Festival, where we saw that it moved months and months into the winter because we had business that was already filling the months where it was. So it's a really good way to spread and see, where do we need to put the business? Where do we need to put our marketing efforts? And as well, after all of that said and done, how did it turn out? Did it work out for us? And we can analyze as internal teams, as government, as private institutions. On the books, for example, this is a 12-month look, so I can look in monthly data, see what's it really looking like in the next months. And so you see, it's not a surprise with COVID that, the numbers are not great, but you can also see the pickup is very, very slow. And something's going to be happening in May 2022 for the competitive set. So you can see that this partner is not having a lot of pickup. They've actually got 0.1% on the books right now for May 2022. But the comp set has 7.6%. So right away you can start to follow. And then with the information that's provided by this third party, you can go out as a business yourself and see, where's the business coming from? Go and, sit, have a coffee in a hotel, in a partner's, restaurant, and just really see what is it that seems to attract these numbers better than maybe your own business. Finally, not to keep you so long, I just wanted to show a little bit of how we're looking in Iceland at the moment, because this is something, very interesting. I am not providing data, so I only have information for the market. I don't measure myself against a subject. However, I can see that right now our competitive sets, we do certainly have some increases, but we need some help. So our occupancy has increased dramatically compared to last year. And we know why that is. We have a lot more people traveling, even if it's just a few flights from America, the increase is huge. But people aren't paying what they did last year. And why is that? And I looked a little bit into the numbers, and it's because a lot of the ones reporting last year, they were actually changing their strategy and getting their business being a Sotqui hotel, getting their business bringing in Icelanders who were wanting to come into Reykjavík for the city weekend, or getting the longer stays. So just a little bit, this is just a snapshot of the type of things that we work with Benchmarking Alliance. We work in many different currencies. We can slice and dice data for all areas. This is just the comp sets that I choose to follow. And the final point that I'd like to make is that contributing data into any of our platforms is absolutely complementary. The only thing that we charge for is if companies want to start to, create their own comp sets and follow 4 other boutique hotels or follow hotels in their neighborhoods. So that's one thing that we work very, very well with data contributors, is we don't want the cost to be very large. We'd rather, get everybody in, so we're looking at encompassing information for segments, locations, destinations. So that's just a little introduction to benchmarking, and I'm available, in Reykjavík anytime, and we have partners in all 10 countries, and just to increase the data so we can analyze and get ourselves back in a recovery that's tracked. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is Sturla, founder and CEO of Splitter Software. Today I'm gonna show you guys a little bit about what we are doing. We own a software, it's called Dock. It's a booking systems for agencies and ports. It have taken a lot of time in the past to create bookings. This have mostly been done through emails with sharing Excel sheets, and things like that. That make it a little bit difficult to keep an overview over what ports are receiving over the summer and the whole year around. There have not been a platform with a good overview what is happening tomorrow and what happening yesterday. With Dock, you can do this all with one click. Dock is a complete overview. There's an automation, user-friendly, secure storage, and a lot less time. Users of Dock. Dock can be used of ports, cruise ships agents, tour operators, passenger agents, government agencies, and security agencies. So we can put everyone's together into one platform that saves a lot of time and a communication between all these agents. User-friendly, I mentioned it before. This is really user-friendly. This is really simple. We are direct connected to an international database of registration of cruise ships. So we are working with the ID number of the ships all the time. We can create a journey, we can upload bookings, create manual bookings, all in one place. This can save a lot of time. Today, agents and ports are spending too much time on this bookings. Like you guys can see here, here is a little bit overview over the ships are registered in the system, and there you can see all the main information you need to know about the ship. Simple communication, yes. Before, then all agents and ports, they have to communicate through emails. This can be hundreds of emails all year round. Today, they can communicate through Dock, all in a simple way on each booking, so they can keep track on who is doing what. Seamless, complete overview, automated reports. What is next? Yes, we are heading to Europe. There's already agents and ports in Europe have shown us interest on our software because we are resolving so many problems. So this has been a big problem for a long time, and it's not only here in Iceland. So thank you for today. I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what we are doing, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sturla Thorodsson. This was a micro presentation from him introducing the product of his company, Dock. And we will be hearing a couple of more of these micro presentations later. And a lot of interesting things on our agenda today. We have some very interesting talks about digital visibility and strategy from Visit Greenland, trends in social media marketing. We also have a break coming up soon, which is a very important part of a conference like this, to meet your colleagues and network. But before that, we have a great presentation from Haukur Birgisson, who is a partner in the software company GoTo, where he leads development. He, among other things, leads the Travia team and also leads a data project to understand booking behavior. And I'm very happy with Haukur, who is with us here today. He is so on target because the name of his talk is Future of Travel Tech. And that's the trends we're discussing today. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an interesting presentation so far. It's good to be outdoors again. I feel like that we're kind of coming like from the hive, and we're a little bit rusty. So I'm going to start with a little bit of history. This is on the wrong slide. Let's start from the beginning. Tourism is basically based on bookings. Whether we talk about B2B or B2C, everything is based on bookings. So therefore, we can look at the backbone of the business is the booking part. A lot has changed in the administration of bookings over the past years and decades, especially from the beginning of this century. The booking handling has evolved in line with the importance of the booking, because we know the booking is everything. It is the glue that holds together the travel itinerary and the plan for the individual of their tour, because a trip is defined as movement from point A to point B. With booking systems, the booking has now a place in the environment where the booking feels safe, secure, and is most comfortable in an organized structure. So just a few years ago, booking systems were heavy to work with, complex, and for some sectors in tourism, they didn't even exist, or maybe just on paper. Hotel systems used to be large pieces of paper where rooms and calendar was drawn and handwritten information put on them. Hotel systems in the 20th century used to be expensive, complex, and operationally heavy. They were usually on-premise and only applicable for the larger players. So we basically went from face-to-face booking back in the old days to some toll-free numbers that used to dial in or send a fax or a telegram, and to semi-automated, to online, and now to the cloud. So finally, around 2010, the hotel systems came into the future and started to be built on the cloud and stored in the cloud. That meant the systems are much more scalable, they're cheaper to operate, they have a lower learning curve, and had flexible service. So hotels could basically choose the size of the system that applied to the operation, and therefore smaller hotels had the opportunity to streamline their business. So hoteliers could manage and monitor their business from wherever. We could argue that finally bookings were now on their first class on their journey across the world. Because, of course, as we know, that bookings is the most valuable thing any tourism operator has. Without the booking, the business does not exist. Because a booking is, of course, a collection of service products that is ordered and eventually paid for. Cloud solutions changed a lot, but they are not a guarantee that the booking system is perfect. There are many players on the market that offer cloud solutions, but still do not have an open API or do not allow everyone to connect with them. And usually these companies base their business model on charging API fees. The newest tech today is so-called API-first software, and they do allow anyone to connect with them, which basically makes tech environment grow faster, become an even more open world, and a more fun environment to work in. We are basically on the autobahn into the future of tech, and larger players are finally realizing that in order to be a part of the development of this world, they need to open up and rethink their business model. And there are plenty of great companies that offer software solutions that have been built on top of another software, not only in tourism. We have Öyr, which is built on banking tech. We have Tempo, which is built on Jira. We have Travia by GoTo, which is built on multiple booking software. And we have Captio software built on Salesforce. And there are plenty of other examples across the tech globe. We can all agree that tech changed tourism for the better. Operators had it difficult using multiple systems with multiple logins, and the systems that the hotels used are various. To name a few, they had a channel manager, hotel management system, POS system, human resource system, review system, accounting software, and so forth. Listing these systems can be overwhelming, and it can actually take several months to bring new staff into the system complexity. However, it should be noted that despite great advances in technology, there are still systems in place that are not making the most of the interconnections with other systems. As a result, those who use such systems will always be one step behind the competitor. The good thing is about the modern technology is that today companies are constantly working together to connect these solutions so that the environment is one instead of many. The complexity can be summarized as the diagram shows. A lot has been done in the API-first environment. Many solutions are out there that can be interconnected, that make use of each other and for the operation, but it's entirely dependent on the systems offering an open API. All of the systems and the complexity have arisen because of the booking. If the booking would not flow into the operation, there would be no need for the technical hassle around the business. Then we could just go back to the piece of paper. Too many operators look at these systems to carry out work for them, so it saves up time and creates efficiency. But that's great. But sometimes we do forget that we need more than just automation, and I believe that we should spend more time using data and make decisions based on data. The amount of data that each tourism company has at hand about the company, about the customer, and about the history of transaction is like gold. In a few moments, we're going to look at a case study about how to use data with modern technology and how data can help us streamline the business, create more revenue, and improve guest happiness. But before we go there, I want to discuss a little bit where we are with tech today in this industry. It is a little bit strange that we are sitting here talking about how far, or maybe not so far, we are with travel tech when we are talking about self-driving cars, unmanned space shuttles going to Mars, food drones, and some groundbreaking tech in life science. As we have discussed, cloud solutions appeared in travel tech around 2010, and from there, tech has been growing exponentially. But in 2010, I think most of us already had internet banking, really fast Wi-Fi, and we had all seen, and many of us had smartphones. But just before this, many hotels had a huge computer in the basement of the hotel to operate bookings. Thankfully, travel tech is growing as fast as other tech now. Tech and tech development goes hand in hand. The buyer is used to certain things in one place, and the buyer wants to use the same tech as they use in one place in another place. So research has shown that travelers like to do the same things they do normally, also when they travel, such as ordering a taxi, pay for use of service, and order room service. But they also want to do things that does not include tech, such as asking for directions, asking for recommendations, and making a complaint, because these are not things that we're used to do with tech. Let's take an example of a process of booking a luxury hotel a few years ago. It used to be based on standards of the room or the product, location, amenities, service level, and last but not least, pricing. Let's fast forward to this very day, and many hotels think that this is the same process. But why is it that Hotel A, that offers the same room, same service, same amenities, for a lower price than Hotel B, but still Hotel A is not guaranteed the booking? The answer is simple, but yet very complicated. Because hotels are not in the operation of selling rooms. They are in the business of selling experience. Today's tech is evolving in a way where hoteliers can use data to make service as spot on as possible for each and every guest. And the data can be used to maximize the revenue, increase loyalty, and offer better service for the guest. The hotelier can use the same data to streamline the business and make the business more profitable. And all of this is based on information from that little thing we call a booking. The same booking as people made when they were looking at gladiators fight in the Colosseum. The future of tech is going to build that the technology is going to be tailored to the operation rather than tailoring the operation to the tech. And moreover, tailor the tech to the tourist rather than tailoring the tourist to the tech. I would think that for the future that most tech will be able to talk and share data and information amongst one another with our consent, obviously. In that way, we as users and future buyers will get better service and our service will be spot on. And now I want to showcase to you a case study that we have been working on for the past 10 months that utilizes data to make businesses better and tourism more reliable and profitable. The problem that many companies in tourism, especially hotels, is overbooking. They overbook for certain days, they overbook for certain periods, because the hotels know that bookings are not necessarily guaranteed business. So they overbook to leverage themselves for the uncertainty. The overbooking strategy is in many cases built on industry knowledge, feeling, and a lot of experience. we see that tourists are booking with much shorter advance today, which means that the hotels will know later in the stage if the booking is confirmed or cancelled, which means that they have a shorter time to resell the room and therefore lose revenue. Some hotels have tried to make the cancellation policy stricter, which may have a negative effect on the tourist and the travel agency. We've been using machine learning to predict the validity of the bookings by looking at historical data. What this means is that we can predict how likely and how unlikely a certain booking will be cancelled. And just a little bit of a tech jargon, we use gradient boosting, and that's a machine learning technique for regression and classification problems, which produces a prediction model in the form of an ensemble of weak prediction models, which is typically decision trees. And it relies on the intuition that the best possible next model, when combined with the previous model, minimizes the overall prediction error. So what we do is that we train our model with past data to predict new data. We train the model with 80% of the old data and predict the remaining 20% of the data. And therefore, we can see how well we did. So this is a subset of maybe 50 hotels, and these are 20% of the bookings that we managed to do a prediction. So we managed to make a prediction of 84% of all of the bookings, and we only had 16% uncertainty, which is a pretty good result. And this is the distribution of it. So we managed to predict 21% of the bookings were likely cancellations, and 63 are likely confirmations. So we managed to correctly predict 94% of all bookings, which basically means that we have a 6% error. And this means that we scored a 9.4 out of 10, which is pretty good if you compare it to a test that you do in exam. For the confirmation predictions, we managed to predict 90% correctly, with a 10% error when it came to the confirmation part. But what does this mean? If we put this to practice in a hotel that is in the greater Reykjavík area, it's a medium-sized hotel. Hotel has seasonality, as we are all known in the tourism industry. It has about 380 million ISK revenue a year, and the cancellation ratio is about, on average, 27%. The occupancy is correlated with the revenue, obviously, and the average occupancy was 70%. These are 2019 numbers, not 2020. So how can we put our machine learning model into practice at this particular hotel? We said that this hotel has around 27% cancellation rate. It would be pretty unfair to me to say that 27% of all cancellations is lost revenue. I can agree with myself that that's quite unfair. But if we would try to influence 5% of all cancelled bookings by trying to persuade them not to cancel, we would increase revenue just under 5 million ISK a year. We said that 90% of the bookings, we can predict 90% of the bookings to be confirmed, and we can actually classify them to highly likely to be confirmed, moderately likely to be confirmed, and so forth. What if we could upsell the top bookings that are highly likely to be confirmed? Then we could increase our revenue by about 17 million a year. And hotels are usually upselling something. But using this technology, they can actually upsell the people that has the highest probability of buying an upsell. If we combine these two numbers, the hotel would basically be increasing the revenue by 22 million a year, which is a 6% average in increase. Obviously, this is a use case for a hotel in Reykjavík, and this is purely based on revenue. But what we can use this algorithm for is, for example, prediction of revenue, prediction of when people are going to check in, so you can make better staff plans at your hotel, and so forth. This is the first version of our algorithm, and we plan to do multiple models that can operate on multiple information that is based on the booking. So thank you so much.
People in here, do you have any questions for Haukur? We have. Just thank you very much for your talk. It's very interesting to hear about. There's one clarification I'm so interested in. On a general note, you say that the future of travel tech, it's not all about automation, but more about the data. Mm-hmm. But aren't these kind of trends combined in some ways? Like the automation is driven by the data collection?
Yeah, of course, but some hotels use automation to some extent too much. Mm-hmm. They sometimes automate everything mm-hmm. and forget to use maybe data to try to take better care of the customer. Mm-hmm. And doing that automatically is maybe not always possible.
Right. Sometimes you need the human touch.
Exactly.
But with the insights of data.
Yes, exactly.
Given. I just wanted to have the opportunity to have this talk here with the plant we have here to make for that kind of discussion. But thank you again so much, Haukur. And we are going on a break. We're going to take a short break. But the people who are joining on a live stream, don't go too far, because we will be back here with a very interesting talks in 20 to 3. Until then, thank you. We're going to continue with our program. We had a very good program here before the break. Thank you all the speakers that came here and spoke to us about this important topic. But now we're going to hear a short micro presentation from Valur Þór Gunnarsson of Tactical. It's called Fast Forward with Digital Contracts.
Hi, my name is Valur Þór. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tactical. Tactical helps businesses build digital, smooth onboarding processes. And now we also do that for travel. If we look at the problem in travel today, we have a lot of processes that are still on paper that you, of course, want to have digital like the rest of your processes, your booking system, etc. So today I want to focus on one single problem, the waiver. The travel can often not be done until a waiver is signed. Today, with a ballpoint pen, on a piece of paper, standing outside the bus in an Icelandic summer weather, a terrible and stressful experience. So by introducing a digital waiver, you eliminate the stress, you create better experience, and you eliminate the bottlenecks, and you free up your staff to do more useful things. So the situation today is that we have 85 to 90% of these particular processes still paper-based. That means you can't automate anything. You can't talk to other systems and integrate. So what we want to do is make this a smooth and digital process. So imagine your customers being able to finish all this paperwork on their mobile phone days before they go on the trip. So by introducing digital waivers, you allow for faster check-ins, less works, more security, and overall better experience. And we also allow for branding and white labeling, so you can have your brand in the forefront. We are in the back, just providing the technology. And the reason for I'm here today is we are already working with government, insurance, finance, etc. And we are very excited to work with travel. And we are looking for the first customers that will help us finalize the development of this, which is on the verge of being ready. We have been working on this for years now. And we want to offer you to be the first ones to integrate digital waivers. So if you're interested, please contact me on my mobile or my email, and I would love to work with you and hear about your bottlenecks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valur Þór. Being able to very quickly and smoothly make other people sign waivers is very good. I think it's going to be the future of everything. We're going to sign a waiver for just meeting up with our friends. Just, better safe than sorry. Have a waiver, and maybe in the future we will all sign waivers when we attend even a meeting like this. Who knows? We are on to a very, very interesting talk from Philip Gjelda, who is the head of digital of Visit Greenland. So we're going to hear some interesting stories of that project called Digital Visibility and Strategy.
Hello everyone. I'm happy to be here together with you to present the project that I've been a part of for the last year and a half. I just need to... So yeah, the project is called Digital Tourism in the Nordics, which has an acronym DTN, and the project is founded by the Nordic Council of Ministers. But before we jump into the project itself, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself, so you have a better understanding who is a part of the working group on the project. My name is Philip, and I am head of digital at Visit Greenland. You can connect with me by scanning the code with your camera if you would like to get in touch on either LinkedIn or Instagram. And regarding the projects, project is being created still by 4 countries and 4 representatives from the countries. So we have Faroe Islands, which is being represented by the Visit Faroe Islands. We have the Iceland, which is being represented by Icelandic Tourist Board. And then we have Greenland with Visit Greenland and Finland with Business Finland. And we, at the beginning of the whole project, before the whole project really started, we had to analyze the situation and come up with identification of the real needs. What is the need from the local providers, and how could we help them develop their skills, and how could we help them move forward towards the digital readiness. And because of that, we have conducted a series of different analyses, and we conducted different interviews, and we came up with some different ideas on how we could process with it. Because the biggest issue was, and still is for many working as a small or medium-sized operators, the amount of time you have to prioritize the things when it comes to visibility, when it comes to commercial side of your business. And because of that, we focused on 3 different aspects. The first aspect was to create a kind of e-learning, create some inspiration that you can browse through some articles or videos to learn a little bit more about digital marketing, to learn a little bit more about GDPR, how to do it in the easiest possible way, and other things that normally takes time to grasp, but we wanted to convert it in a way that how, by using our platform, you could use as little time as it is needed in order to move forward and progress with it. And while we were identifying these needs, we also came to the conclusion that we would also like to base it in a form of a community of people who can network with each other, the community of people who can find someone who works on a similar thing from one of the other Nordic countries. But we also wanted to put it in a frame of events, both the digital events and the physical events. So our goal with the whole platform is to create a framework for tourism operators that is going to be driven by universities and in a good cooperation with visits organizations, with the national boards, and also other people who can take the ownership for creating the content and for administrating the platform. So that said, I would just like to quickly tell you a little bit more about the 3 different categories. And as our logo is built of 3 elements and the 3 different colors, they are signifying and responding to different categories and areas. So the green one, which we'll start with, is the inspirational part. And by identifying the inspiration, which will be based as the article and the videos, we decided to go with some of the main subjects that were mentioned several times during the interviews that were conducted amongst the tourism operators, which are, for example, research and publications, which means how you could use some of the tourism statistic reports in order to develop products that are relevant and modern, for example, and meet the demands from the people. And then we would like to also say tell you a little bit more about the grants and funds, how you could fund your next project, because there are so many funds and grants that tourism operators that are not really aware of. So that was another thing. And the sales and marketing is also a very broad subject, which covers, for example, SEO and the visibility and the social media, and basically everything what has to do with the marketing on digital. That said, all the other categories are also really important, and the Travel Tech will focus greatly on the online travel agencies and which services and how to use it. So basically, to sum it up once again, how by reading and consuming the content on our platform, you can optimize your time and use the things actually that work, instead of using, testing and using your time on trying things that not necessarily are worth using the time on. So the platform will look, and already now looks like that. So under the inspiration, we have some of the latest articles, and then you can filter the rest of the articles, or you can also sort it by the different factors. You'll get a little bit thorough walkthrough on the video in a minute. But the second part is the community part. So if you remember the old school forums where people were connecting and interacting with each other, the community part of our platform will also focus on this dialogue that you can have with people. It is a very, very easy and user-friendly layout where you can ask the question, you can meet the people, and you can also accept people as friends. So it's a very the soft level of networking that might benefit you greatly. And our idea was to get you to become friends like those here, but maybe with a little bit less Botox. So the events was the third part, which was also really important for us, because a lot of people has answered in our interviews that they would like to participate in some of the events that are taking place, and they don't know where to find them and how to even participate in them. And there are so many events that are also being held where people are going, and then they're going to be a little bit disappointing because the amount of time that they use on doing the research and then figure it out what the event was about doesn't always meet the expectation as it was shown. So we wanted to create an event calendar which gathers the events in the Nordic countries, but also other European countries, or actually also worldwide events, that people can participate, and it will be curated by either us or the universities that we are going to work together with on this one. And here is a short walkthrough of the platform. Great. So we are currently in the process of opening the platform for everyone, so you can already go and check it out. In this form, as it is, it's still gathering the content that we would like to provide as the very first step. We are also working on talking with some of the universities and trying to fine-tune the website, but we want at the same time to make it as transparent as possible so everyone can feel included in the platform and can see how it progresses. So the question is also that we're trying to answer and we're trying to bridge somehow is how are we going to make it work? So we're creating this sustainable solution, putting the framework to work, and letting the academics to be the main power and the main energy behind the whole platform, and is being supervised, of course, with our countries and our organizations. And the very first one that we have contacted that has tourism program is Aalborg University in Denmark, who actually showed the interest, and we are still in the having a dialogue with them. And in our pipeline are also some of the conversations with other universities and also academics from other Nordic countries. But we are still also open for extending the scope, because the knowledge that is going to be gathered here and all the network that can be found here is something that can benefit everyone within the Nordic countries region. So that said, we are also focusing on trying to find the tech partners, such as big IT partners such as Google and maybe other companies such as IBM, who would like to provide some of the content and show the interest in the platform as a CSR on their end. And we are also kickstarted the dialogue with several partners, and we are at this point also trying to build this community which has so many different stakeholders, and for us it's really important that we do it in a sustainable way, so we can put ourselves, the ones who are working on the projects, in the working group that I'm a part of, and then let the platform live its own life. So that said, you are welcome to, if you're aware or if you're creating an event, or you know that you're participating in some kind of event that could come on our websites, or if you're thinking about some kind of opportunities that you see on your end regarding our project, you are welcome to find us under the About page on our website, and then get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip, and thanks for giving people the opportunity to reach out to you, and because this is obviously all about extending the network and making people come aboard. We're going to continue with our program. Further on in our schedule, we have an interesting micro presentation about optimizing post-booking experience, and then we're going to end with a very interesting talk about what we can learn from the gaming industry. There's a lot of strategy to be learned from the gaming industry, and how in human behavior basically, and how people react to certain factors and trends. And it's going to be our final talk from Tryggvi Hjaltason, who works with CCP. But now we are going to hear a very important point of view regarding the future of the travel industry, and it's very related to tech, because it is about how marketing has been completely transformed with the use of people who can directly have a relationship with their fans and followers, and can do so in a very creative way. And Ása Steinars is a filmmaker and photographer and does very creative work where she promotes, well, she mostly works here in Iceland, so she promotes, of course, the Iceland travel industry, and she has some very valuable insights into trends in social media marketing in general. And that's what we're going to learn about in her talk that we're going to see now. The floor is yours.
Hey everyone, today I will be talking about social media marketing. I'm Ása Steinars and I am a photographer and videographer from Iceland. I'm also a social media expert with over 700,000 in following over my platforms. My life has been kind of dedicated to photography and videography last couple of years, or actually probably the last 10 years. But I would say that I properly got into this when I started working for Sahara. And Sahara is one of the largest social media agencies in Iceland, and it was quite interesting for me to get also the agency aspect of this business. And that was a great school for me, where I got some insight into some of the largest companies in Iceland. We worked on many campaigns. I managed to work with influencers and also creating a lot of content every day. So after working for them, I decided to go fully self-employed and have been self-employed for the last 3 years. You can say that my office is Iceland right now, so I spend most of my time out in the Icelandic nature with a camera in hand, and even more so recently because of COVID. Before COVID, I worked more internationally, but lately I have been more here in Iceland and developed a stronger relationship with companies in Iceland, which I think is just a great development. I have mainly put focus on these social accounts, so Instagram and TikTok. However, I am on all the other platforms, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest. And before I actually started on social media, I had my own travel blog. So before social media came along, we had more bloggers, and I did similar stuff on my blog. I was collaborating with companies, I was writing about their services, and I think still today blogs are very relevant, but that's a time for another talk. Today we're going to focus on the social media aspects. I also started recently a small company called Van Life Iceland, and that has been quite fun for me to experiment with, especially using social media for our marketing. And this is right now a small hobby project, but our events are sold out this summer, so I'm quite excited to take on that as well. But today I will be talking about how to reach millennials and Gen Z. We also know them as the Instagram and TikTok generations. So first we should look at travel trends for these age groups, millennials and Gen Z. And the way we travel is constantly changing, and even more so after COVID, and we're probably going to see travel trends change even more. But what has been happening the last couple of years is that the younger generations, they want to reconnect with nature. So they try to avoid crowded places, they want unique experiences out in nature. And we see this, for example, in trends with camper vans. Like camper van travels are becoming very big within Europe and within the US and even Iceland. Also, we see an increased focus on environment. So these generations, they are more aware of the environment, and maybe even it affects their travel choices, like they will travel by train instead of an airplane and so forth. Also, we see an increased focus on personal health. So these generations, they are more aware of like their health and things like yoga, meditation, mountain biking, ski touring. These are all trends that are now becoming very popular, and people are maybe even dedicating their holiday for focusing on their health. So they're doing yoga retreats and meditation retreats, and I can see that some companies that are aware of this trend, they have started to implement this into their own products. For example, there's a very famous festival in Costa Rica called Envision Festival, and that's just a normal music festival, but they have implemented yoga and meditation into that, and with great success. It seems also that activities and experiences is the main drive behind travel decisions, and emotions rather than price. So these generations, they are focusing on the activities they can do and the experiences rather than maybe the destination or the price. So it's this emotion that is very important to them, and we'll get more into that later. So how to reach millennials and Gen Z, and that's what I will go over today, these 4 points. So social media is where they will find you and you will find them, because these generations, they are spending up to 6 hours a day on their phone. So if you aren't on social media, they probably won't find your services or your company. Number 2 is that you need to invest in content that speaks to them and is relevant to them. Number 3, mobile first. This generation, they want to book through their phones. So your website has to be developed for mobile so that people can easily book through it. So when developing websites, it is important to think about mobile first. And number 4 is influencers, and influencers are important because these generations, they listen to their peers and people they follow on social media and less to traditional advertising. So let's start with social media. This is a survey that was done actually throughout all the age groups, and it turns out that when someone wants to learn about a company or a service, that the main place they go to is social media. So if someone hears about your company, it's not unlikely that they will look you up on social media to find out more about what you do. And what we see now is that video is the future. And where are Gen Z and millennials? So you find them mainly on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Snapchat. And what do all these 4 platforms have in common? They all have in common that they have been launching recently short format videos that are between 15 to 30 seconds, where the user can access a big music library. So they can use music from their favorite artist and post it over their video that is like 15 to 30 seconds. So Instagram, and this is TikTok, came with this feature first out of everyone. And this is coming from TikTok's success. TikTok is a very successful platform, and now Instagram, YouTube, and Snapchat are basically copying what they are doing. So Instagram, they launched Instagram Reels, YouTube is launching YouTube Shorts, and Snapchat is launching Snapchat Spotlight. And this is all sort of the same short snippet videos. So my question to your company is that, will you join these platforms and try to grow organically, or will you at least start making short format videos so that you can run ads on these platforms? Also, as you can see here, this is example from my account. And here I'm experimenting with Instagram Reels. And what's also interesting about TikTok and these Instagram Reels is that this content is viral and it goes very far organically. And this is something that we hadn't seen before. So before you only shared content to your audience, but now the content seems to be reaching much further than that, maybe 10 times or 20 times your following. So these are some of my most popular Reels. They reached 8.1 million, 4.7 million people, or all organically. What I also sometimes try to explain to especially travel companies is that Instagram and TikTok is for awareness. So if you're trying to sell something and you use Instagram and TikTok, you might see a lot of direct sales if you're trying to advertise clothing or an app. For example, an influencer promotes an app and says swipe up to get the app. You might see a lot of app downloads. But with travel, it's a lot more for awareness, because these generations, they are on social media to seek inspiration for travel. So when they see the travel destinations or services or like, glacier hiking or a hotel they like, they will save those content pieces for their bucket list, So that's good to keep in mind, that even if you invest in these platforms, don't always expect to see direct sales. It's so much more about the awareness and the first step of buying, for example. For these platforms, good engaging content matters. So you need to think about a lot of things like good lighting, etc. And your social media profiles, they should reflect what you stand for and your services. So here I'm gonna take some video examples of those short snippet videos I was talking about, and this is taken from TikTok.
Dear friends, greetings from Arctic Circle Rovaniemi. It's almost Christmas. I hope you have a nice and cozy time with friends and family. Very Merry Christmas time.
So while I've been navigating through TikTok, I see that it's not a lot of travel companies that are using TikTok yet, but there are a few out there that are using it with a lot of success. And this example was from the tourism board Visit Rovaniemi. And they did some Santa Claus content over Christmas. It went super viral. Their videos were getting 6 million views and 4 million views. And as you can also see, the content, it doesn't have to be complicated. This is simply filmed with a phone and very simple content and goes far. Next example is Magda's Hotel.
Okay, I'm bored in the house and I'm in the house, bored. Bored in the house and I'm in the house, bored. Bored in the motherfucking house, bored, and I'm bored in the motherfucking house, bored. Bored in the house, bored in the house, bored. Bored in the house, bored in the house, bored. I'm bored in the motherfucking house, bored, and I'm bored in the motherfucking house, bored.
So this video, for example, received 2 million views, and they did this during lockdown. And as you can see here, the company is using a trending audio. So this audio was, for example, trending a lot during lockdown. And that's also what's important on these platforms. You need to find which audio is trending and then implement your own ideas to that audio.
Stop. What the hell are you talking about? Get my pretty name out of your mouth. We are not the same with or without. Don't talk about me like how you might know how I feel. Top of the world, but your one isn't real.
And the last video is a video from me that received 1 million views from a hotel in Iceland. And this is a typical content piece that creates that emotion that I talked about earlier. That emotion like, I want to visit that hotel, that looks amazing, and people save it for later. And this is also the typical content that actually makes you book things. Someone sees that hotel and gets inspired. So next thing we're going to talk about is you need to invest in content, and that I go by the motto that you can never have too much content. You can never really have enough. For example, if I would tell myself one day I have enough content of Iceland, even though I'm traveling all the time and I have loads and loads of hard drives of content, I would not be successful on social media. So the more you have, the better you will perform. And why do we need good content? And this is also due to a generation difference. So the older generations, they are more likely to read a review about your services, while the younger generations, they think a lot more visually. So they will go to your website and look at your images and your videos and your social media platforms. And if your content looks good, they trust you. And we see this if, for example, a millennial is getting married or renovating their house. They will look first through images to get inspired. So they will create boards on Instagram or Pinterest for inspiration. So it's the same in travels. Millennials, for example, they do the research on where to travel on social media, and 67% of them are going to look at your Instagram page before purchasing. So the best way to create awareness and emotion to travel is through videos and images. And a good example of this emotion that I'm talking about is this photo example. And if we look to the right, we just see a normal landscape photo, and it doesn't tell us that much. But then if we look to the left, it gives us a completely different emotion to the image and a lot more attachment to it. So we look at that image and we think to ourselves, oh wow, like I want to be there, I want to be doing what he is doing. So that's an example of engaging content that is pretty important. The content also needs to be authentic, and this is even more important to the Gen Z generation. They actually want it like less filtered and more raw, and we see that on TikTok. A lot of the videos that are performing well are simple videos created with the phones. So it doesn't have to be complicated, it doesn't have to be heavy productions, you just need to start somewhere. What's also important is to be quick and act fast and see what is happening in society, like be on top of things. And good example of that is, for example, the volcano in Iceland. So the companies and the photographers that were first on site, capturing the volcano, they're the ones that reach so much attention, maybe even from media outlets, and it drove a lot of traffic to their social accounts, and they grew a lot. This is maybe an extreme example, but we have a lot of these examples, like full moon or northern lights. So always be quick and on top of things. It's also quite important if you're going to be marketing on TikTok to be on the platform, to scroll, to see what other creators are doing, know what music is trending, and so forth. So you need to invest a bit of time to actually know these platforms. What's also important to the millennials and Gen Z is diversity. When they look at your marketing material, are you careful of displaying all types of people, or are you only displaying one type of people? So that's also good to keep in mind when creating content. Next then is mobile first. And as mentioned before, the Gen Zs, they're spending 6 hours on their phone. And if I take myself, for example, a lot of my future travels and my bucket list is inspired from social media. So the places that I would like to travel to in the coming years or months is very much inspired by social media. And when I travel, I tend to book my flights through a laptop because you don't want to do mistakes with wrong dates or something. But everything else I book on the phone. I book hotels, activities, taxis, and I read information. So again, it's just emphasizing that your website needs to be mobile friendly because, for example, if I go to a web page and I try to book something and it's not mobile friendly, I will exit that web page and find a new company that has it better put together. And lastly is partner with influencers. And some people say that influencer marketing doesn't work, but here are the numbers of how the influencer marketing growth is growing and the money that will be put into that type of marketing in 2021. So this is a very growing business, and working in this industry, it's also fun to see that it's always developing and companies are becoming very professional at working with influencers. They're adding them into their marketing strategies and even including them in bigger campaigns, like well thought through campaigns. And why should you work with influencers? And that is because Gen Z and millennials, they are listening to their peers for purchasing advices. And this means that their friends or influencers they follow on social media is who they listen to, and less to traditional advertising. Like these generations are actually they very much block out traditional advertising. They're not listening because they've been bombarded with ads their whole life on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere. So they want to see real, relatable people, and authenticity is important, and influencers will give you this versus traditional advertisements. Also is that they can create content for you that you can possibly use on your channels later on. Of course, that is something that you deal with the influencers, if that's possible or not, but that's a smart way to do it. So how do you work with influencers? So you want to not only look at their following number, you also want to check out their reads and their engagement rate. And also don't be shy to ask for these numbers. And yeah, you just want to know if it's a fit to your company. And also if you see an account with a lot of following but very few likes, that might also indicate that that account isn't performing very well. And I see that accounts, they sort of fall in and out of fashion. So it's good to just be aware to check all these numbers. Pick the ones that also can create good content for your channels. So it's always good to do 2-in-1. You work with influencers and they also create content for your company. So then you get a production, but you also get the reach. And this is also just something that you need to deal in advance. And it's good to just make everything clear before you work together of what they shall deliver, your rights to use their content, and if there's payment involved. Also, if you are going to work with influencers, I recommend to just go all in. Like, don't send them on a tour with a lot of guests and it's a crowded tour and they do not get good photos. Like, if you can, send them with a private guide and they will have much better opportunities to create beautiful images, and you both benefit from it. They will share more and you will get more photos. Also, find the ones with the correct audience that are going to want to buy your product. And an example of that is who is the better fit in this case for a travel brand. So the girl on the right, she has 1 million followers, and the girl on the right around 600,000. However, the girl with the less amount of following is a lot better fit for a travel company because her following is obviously looking for travel inspiration, beautiful content, while the following of the girl on the right is probably more looking for fitness and family advice. And finally, I was gonna mention this a little bit as well as a bonus, but that's influencer hosting. So this is also becoming a bit more popular. And I see that because I get emails every single day from companies asking me to host trips. So I have done this myself. I invited my audience to sail with me in Lofoten, and that was in a collaboration with a boat company called Puka Travels. And when I launched the trip, it sold out in 5 minutes with 120 people on a waiting list. So this works in a way that influencer hosts a trip to your destination and invite their audience to come along. And this works best with destinations that the influencers want to travel to themselves. And then you get so much out of it. It's like a combination of a lot of things. It's like so much marketing through the influencer because they will be talking about it before they go there, while they're on the trip for 1 week, and also post a lot about it after the trip is over. So one way is to look at it as sales, but you could also not think about sales at all and only think about the marketing aspect that you get of an influencer hosting a trip to your destination because it gives so much reach and awareness. Companies that are doing this quite successfully and are always reaching out are, for example, Trova Trip, Wonder XO, Asanela Expeditions, Elite Encounters, and V Travel. So that was obviously a very quick summary of marketing to millennials and Gen Z, but I hope you enjoyed listening, and don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Thor Sigurðsson. I'm the founder and CEO of the travel tech company Exploria. We have been developing a solution for the tourist industry that enables the traveler to see in real time where to be picked up. Here we can see the overview map of the solution. It consists of one web portal, one traveler app, and one app for the driver or the guide. So what is the problem that we are solving? Yes, today there's no real-time communication between the traveler and the tour operator, so the traveler is constantly calling the tour operator to ask where's my bus, where should I wait, and so on. And also the hotel staff, they are answering questions from the traveler at the lobby regarding upcoming tours. And here you can see a picture that I took last winter in Iceland, that you can see lots of travelers waiting in line to be picked up, and you can imagine how it is for these travelers to find the exact bus that they are waiting for. And that could lead to, during all this chaos that you saw on the previous slide, that the pickup is late, the communication between the driver and the tour operator and the traveler is not good, and a bad comment like this on TripAdvisor or similar websites, they can actually lead to less bookings on the long run. So the product itself, the traveler gets like a push notification once the pickup starts, and once they're like 500 meters until the vehicle arrives to your location, you get a notification with a license plate number and name of the driver. And later this year, we'll be opening a website for the traveler so he can look at the location of the bus on the web, not only by the app. So the traveler can use like one solution with multiple tour operators. We are currently in beta testing now, and if you want to sign up to do some testing with us, please contact me, Thor, at thor@exploria.com, and I will be happy to assist you and get you on your track. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thor. And of course, from Ása Steinars, we're a thorough and articulate gathering of information about this new way of communicating with people. Of course, marketing in general is changing a lot with social media and influencers. I'm just so baffled by all of this development with 10 and 15-second videos. I mean, I just hope it will not become, shorter than that. I'm just hoping, it's not going to be like in 10 years we're going to be in a similar conference and somebody's going to say it cannot be more than 2 seconds. Then I hope this curve has some kind of end to it. But obviously we have added new dimensions into our signaling, which is the live feed that we are able to respond quickly. So even though a video or a message is very short, just the correct timing of when we put it forward and how it's done actually adds a lot of context and information to that short video. So the amount of maybe information in the message that we are mediating is not really decreased, if you think about it like that. It's just a surplus of another dimension. We just have one speaker left, and he's joining us live. I think we already have the live link from the Westman Islands. Vestmannaeyjar, how are you doing over there, down south?
Hi, Bergur. I am doing most excellent, thank you. Thanks for beautiful.
How was the weather? Is it an appropriate question to ask somebody in the Westman Islands?
The wind always goes over slowly here in Westman.
Yeah, that's true. So I was just telling the audience here that are with us here in Gróska that this is going to be a very interesting talk you're going to give, because you have the background and you currently work in the gaming industry, and then you have a very interesting background on top of that. I guess you will do most of the explaining yourself in your talk, but Tryggvi Hjaltason currently works with CCP, so he works in gaming, but he has some very interesting experience in psychology and understanding human nature from very different viewpoints. And I think this will all be explained better here, but I think we can extract some very valuable insights towards behavior of people in terms of travel from his talk. So I will just give you the floor now. Your talk is called Experience Design and Customer Research, Lessons from the Gaming Industry. That's Tryggvi Hjaltason, live from the Westman Island.
Thank you, Bergur. So I've been working for the last 6 years in the video games industry, and I'm going to share a little bit about what I've been learning there. But before I joined the video games industry, I actually worked every summer in Vestmannaeyjar as a side gig in the tourist industry. My in-laws run a tourist company in Vestmannaeyjar, so every summer for probably 8 or 9 years, I would take groups of tourists around Vestmannaeyjar, either as a bus driver, as a guide, as a walking guide, different types of groups and sizes and tours. And because we're at the end of the day today, and I know we get tired after consuming so much interesting information, I want to take you on a little bit of relaxation exercise. So I'm going to ask you now, if you're holding a phone or you have a split focus, to put away your phone. If you're at home watching, to pull down all tabs and anything that might distract you, because I wanna go through something interesting that I experienced when I was guiding in Vestmannaeyjar. So we would take tours and groups all over Vestmannaeyjar, up to Heimaklettur, up to Eldfell, the volcano, down to the harbor area, around the sports area. There was one spot. There's one spot in Vestmannaeyjar that we had in these tours that seemed to have a magical element to it. And I want you to close your eyes now. I'm going to walk you through this spot. I'm going to see if I can paint a picture in your mind. So this spot is at a place called Stórhöfði, which is the southernmost tip of Vestmannaeyjar. And to get there, let's say we are on a bus tour. We need to drive up a really steep road. You're in a bus, in a group with other people. You don't know exactly when the next stop is going to be. You're looking around, the nature is beautiful. And then we stop on a small parking lot in the middle of this slope. It's very steep. The bus is parked. You go out of the bus, and there's a railing that you need to cross. And once you cross that, you're basically in an area full of sheep. And there's a roughly guided trail that you need to walk. And you need to walk it up a hill, a ridgeline, and on the other side of it, the explosion of the ocean view runs into your face. And as soon as you cross the hill, you don't hear the cars anymore. You don't see any sort of human development. You don't see the parking lot or other cars. You're just in pure nature. And this is only about 30, 40 seconds from the parking lot. Sheep are walking alongside you. You need to mind your steps because we don't have like a paved trail or anything like that. And there's sheep dropping all over the place. And then you walk up to a cliff. And in the cliff, there is a slope, and the slope is all bumpy. Why is it bumpy? It's bumpy because puffins have been living there for hundreds and hundreds of years. The slope is filled with puffins. You can hear the birds, and you can touch the sheep. They will come up to you, and you look down over a cove called Klaufin, which is a black sand beach. And about every other day in the summer, you will see whales there, usually orcas, killer whales, but also minke whales and different types of whales. So this is the scene. I'm not going to go deeper into this, but I hope you managed to visualize it a little bit in your mind, because at this spot, I have seen hundreds of people break down and cry. The emotion, the experience of going to this spot is so overwhelming for them that they start crying. And I sincerely hope that for you guys in the tourist industry that you've run through this moment where you're delivering such a deep sense of value to a human being that he just can't contain their emotion and he breaks down and starts crying. So I thought for an exercise with you guys, I want to try and break down with you why. Why do people become so overwhelmed at certain spots in nature? that we can offer here in Iceland. And I'm gonna share a little bit of what I've learned through technical design and player research in the gaming industry that may shed some light on this. So I'm going to share my screen now real quickly. I'm not actually going to show a lot of slides, but I'm going to show a couple. So the background is video games. Why? Why and how could video games be related to what we're talking about? Well, if I give you a little bit of background on the industry today, we have 2,600 million video game players today in the world. And this is last year's numbers. This is expected to rise by another 125 million this year and another 125 million after that. So it's very rapidly spreading across the globe. And what that means is this is quickly becoming one of the biggest cultural shaper in modern societies. The video games today already outnumber both the movie industry and the music industry in terms of revenue, actually by a wide margin, and it's closing in on sports as well. The biggest avenues and events in the world today are mostly video games related. The FIFA World Cup is still the biggest event on the planet today, but like the finals match in a game called League of Legends is drawing up to 200 million people at peak viewership. This is becoming a massively big industry. And this has relevance to us because gaming companies invest yearly hundreds of millions of dollars and sometimes billions into player research and gather behavioral data. What is super interesting about working in the gaming industry is you have such a strong access to what do human beings actually do, and you can measure it, and you can follow up with feedback on so many levels. And I actually believe it's unparalleled in most cases. So what has the gaming industry been learning? One of the things I think the gaming industry and the tourist industry have in common is we are in the business of memory installation. So if you think about yourself, what are you as a human being? You're mostly, the way you experience yourself is you're a collection of experiences. You're a collection of memories. And that is how you define yourself. That is how you look towards the future. That is how you assess risk. That is how you decide if you're a successful or an unsuccessful person, a happy person or a sad person, and everything there in between. And your experiences shape you. If you've burned yourself using fireworks in the past, you will be more timid in approaching fireworks in the future, most likely. So how are memories mostly formed and regulated in the brain? This is something that games actually think about a lot. And I was very happy to see the previous talk because she talked a lot about the importance of emotions. I could not agree more. Emotions are the biggest behavioral drivers of man. And I wish the talk today could only be about emotions. I could spend 3 hours just delving into emotions with you. They're extremely interesting and powerful vehicles of human change and thought. But I want to delve into it from the perspective that we're thinking about here. Emotions are shapers and keepers of memory. The way we are able to recollect our memories, the way we differentiate between what memories are important and which ones are not, is primarily through emotional biological factors. And emotions are biological responses important to our welfare, activated by the scanning of our environment by our brain and or perceived scarcity. So I'm just going to take a couple of examples. Think about your spouse, if you have a spouse today, like my wife. If I'm asked about the first kiss I had with my wife, I can close my eyes and I can travel back there right now. I remember every detail, where we were, what time it was, how she was dressed, everything. But ask me to remember how was kiss 3243. I am not sure. It blends in. My memory actually does not differentiate. Why? Why does it not differentiate? Well, it's because scarcity. It's because I have the fortune to have abundance of kisses with my wife, but the first moment was so emotionally driven due to anxiety, participation, excitement, settings, all of that stuff. So emotions are important, and again, we could go deeper into why, but let's just establish they're important. I think most of us agree. So what is an emotion and how do you activate it? And it turns out we actually know a lot more about this than most people probably realize. Most people probably think about emotions as being something very fickle and that's hard to capture or quantify. That is actually not the case. Emotion, if I try to simplify a lot, is a human value that is shifted on a scale, and the faster and further it is shifted, the greater the emotional impact will be. And I'm going to take one example. I'm going to use fear. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions we have, and it's for the good or worse, it's one of the key influencers in our lives. Just if you think about yourself, there are so many decisions you make that are primarily motivated by fear. And again, for good or bad, fear is useful in the right context. What you put on your social media page, how you dress, what you decide not to say or not to participate in, how other people perceive you. If you decide to jump ahead and pursue your dreams or sell your house or move abroad, fear comes into play in so many of our decisions. So if I wanted to move you on a scale of fear today, I would have to understand where you're positioned on that scale. So if the scale is a 0 to 100, a 0 would be no fear at all. Very few people live at the 0 scale. Most of us probably live around 30, I would say. We have some healthy fears in our life and some irrational fears. We're probably worried about interest rates or mortgage payments or that our bosses might find out that we were late last week or that our spouses get angry about something stupid we've done. Like there's always something. But a healthy person is probably hovering in the lower range of the scale. And it may look something like this. You see, I've spent the time to build this collage for you guys. But on the other end of it, we have 100, which would be complete panic. This would be you're so exhumed and fear has just taken you so much over that you're in complete panic mode. And then you might look something like this. How fast you move on the scale and how high, that will denote how quickly and powerful your emotions will be activated. So if I am here, let's say I'm in the 30 range right now. I'm situated in the Þekkingarsetur, the knowledge center in Vestmannaeyjar. I'm at my office and I'm feeling okay, not too scared about life, but then I hear gunshots outside. And in the room, a sweaty police officer emerges and he's like, Tryggvi, oh, I didn't know you were here. There's an attack going on in the building. There are guys downstairs with shotguns, and they say that they're here to kill you because of what you posted on Facebook yesterday. So if I'm not a Navy SEAL or a SWAT person, this will probably drive my fear rapidly up to maybe 80, 90, 95. And it will do so in a matter of seconds because it happens so powerfully. I will be in a state of emotion where I'm willing to reassess fundamental things about who I am. Okay, am I willing to kill another person if it comes to that? Am I a coward? Am I going to push the police officer outside and run and jump out the window? Am I going to face my fear? Am I going to stand or fight or flight? All of these things, you have to reassess them. In the few hours or even days after this, I might be willing to reassess fundamental things about myself, like, do I believe in gun rights? Am I willing to buy a gun now, which I may have always been opposed to? It's because fear has activated a really powerful state of reassessing the universe. And you bet that I will remember this day for the rest of my life if it isn't just so overwhelming that I will repress it. So that's a negative example of how emotions create memories, really powerful memories. We could go in the opposite direction, of course, and do positive emotions. So I'm actually gonna stop here to share. And have I not stopped sharing? There we go. Thank you. Okay, so emotions are important. So let's go back to our beautiful spot in the Icelandic nature. How and why does that spot in Stórhöfði in Vestmannaeyjar trigger such deep, powerful emotions? There are many instruments and tools that do increase the odds of activating emotions. And one of them, which is very powerful, I believe, when you're working with the Icelandic nature, is contrast. Contrast is one of the first laws of design when you're doing a good video game. And when you start bringing art people in, like how is the video game going to look? How are we going to make it appealing? And how are we going to raise emotions? They will very soon, probably within the first hour of chatting about what we should do, be talking about contrast. Think about this yourselves. Why is a hot spring more impressive in cold weather? Why is the volcanic eruption that is happening right now so much more impressive in the dark? It's because the contrasts are perfect. And for Stórhöfði, the contrasts there are actually quite powerful. You're in a bus, you're driving on a paved road, you're actually coming from the town area, and then just a few seconds after you step off the bus, the parking lot disappears, all signs of civilization disappear, and you're in pure nature within a touching distance of an animal, and you see birds and you see whales. Boom, extremely powerful contrasts. Anything you can do to enhance contrast in the experiential design of the product or nature or place that you have will enhance the likelihood that you're activating powerful emotions and thus increasing the likelihood that you're creating memories and thus shaping character. A second instrument would be a tactile or sensory experience. So guide them to touch specific elements. And when I say them, I mean the customer, the tourist. It's actually incredible, and I did tests on this when I went with so many groups. If you don't tell people that they can touch stuff, especially if they're Americans, they won't touch stuff. It's incredible. Us Icelanders, we just go and touch everything we want, but most people are actually not like that. Give them the freedom, give them the permission. You can touch stuff, touch the ground, feel how smooth the grass is. I've had so many people say, wow, the grass in Iceland is really smooth. Why? Well, it's because we have so much rain. I used to live in the desert in the US, and the grass there was hard. It had a different element to it. So what if there's like wind or heavy rain? What I come to learn about that spot is that was actually a plus in some cases, because a wind and a heavy rain is a very tactile, it's a sensory experience. So give them the context. Give them the context of what they are experiencing. All right, there's heavy wind. You're experiencing the world's cleanest air forcing itself from a place of activation that happened in the nearby ocean when whales were swimming around. That's how the wind started moving. And now it's entering your nostrils and it's filling your lungs with pure Icelandic goodness. And this is the purest stuff you can get from nature. Paint the picture and force the brain, and this is an important point. I'm going to say it slowly and I'm going to say it twice. Force the brain to create visual stimuli. Force the brain to create visual details which forces human beings to be present in the moment. If you've started to visualize stuff, that's why I made you close your eyes in the beginning, and if you did that exercise with me, you realize that you were here in the moment with me. So help the tourist, help the customer be there in the presence, and that may require a little bit of assistance in putting things in context and giving them that added tactile sensory experience. So for Stórhöfði, going back to my magic place here in Vestmannaeyjar, I allow them to touch Lundahola, a puffin hole where the puffins used to live, which is there's an abandoned Lundahola right where we come over, and I allow them to feel it. The sheeps are getting used to people there, so they will come up to you, and I allow them to pet the sheeps. They have to walk through an uneven path, so they feel the path in their ankles, and they have to struggle a little bit for it. This is all very tactile and sensory. And if the weather is bad, that actually may not be such a bad thing. Because for a lot of people, they've actually not been outside in a really bad weather for a long time. So that actually may be what it will definitely shape a memory. So it's up to us to have that, don't let them know that that's a bad thing. All right, third thing. This is, I believe, one of the most important elements in almost anything that you try to build in terms of experience. It's purpose. clarify the purpose. We all want to lead purposeful, meaningful lives. Help the customer frame for their memory banks for later use, what was the purpose of the experience that they're experiencing now with you? Because for most people, we assign meaning to our experiences afterwards. We actually, when we're going through something massive, like the police officer coming in here in the building telling me about gunshots, I don't assign meaning to it right then. I will do it afterwards when I start going back to the memory and assess it all over again. You can help frame what that meaning is. So for Stórhöfði, I would say something like, congratulations, you are now standing in completely pure nature. In this spot, you are so close to untouched nature that you can spot and sometimes touch sheep, bird, and fish all at the same time. You can hear the ocean, you can feel the grass whilst standing on a mountain, but sometimes even feeling the ocean spraying on your face and smelling it. This is, for all intents and purposes, what your doctor will describe you for good mental health. Pressured into a super pill of optimal natural experience. That is what you're experiencing now. So take this moment in, store it in your brain so you can travel back to it whenever you want. When you're back at your office in New York or your complex apartment in South Korea, you will always have the memory of this place, which you can use to feel better, to feel that tranquility that only pure nature can offer you. This is an extremely strong purpose that almost anybody will resonate with. All right, fourth and final element, I decided to choose 4 out of a large toolbox that I felt fitted really perfectly with tourism. That's to make them struggle. And this is going to sound counterintuitive, but make the customer struggle. Make them suffer a little bit. Why? Because the brain is a peculiar thing. The brain will justify any struggle that he has to go through. It will seek explanation for it. It'll be like, why are you making me walk this steep slope? My calves and thighs are burning. So the brain is thirsting for an explanation. If you manage to, boom, deliver that explanation, that purpose, that meaning at the right time, all right, the reason I made you walk through an uneven path and step in sheep poo and cross a fence and risk spraining your ankles is because I wanted to deliver you this untouched, beautiful nature, which we can't do if I would have just driven you straight up to it. That is why you suffered, and that is why the suffer makes it worth its while. This is actually an extremely reliable thing, as long as you don't end the suffering by, I'm sorry you had to suffer. That actually wasn't necessary. If you do something like this, you can be sure that the suffer reason will be blamed on you. All right. Let's go a little bit before the trip. Let's think about the setup. Before we set up the trip, gaming companies do a lot of something called user research and expectation management. Expectation management, the talk right before me on TikTok and awareness is an excellent example of that. For gaming, it would be to create trailers, something like that. But let's go through a couple of instruments you can, I believe, actually easily use. What are your customers expecting? This is something that you should be able to moderate and control to a degree. You can never fully control the expectation of another human being. But there are a few things, such as don't oversell what you have. If you've given away the cow and everybody's coming expecting awesomeness times awesomeness, the only thing you can deliver is disappointment. So give a clear value proposition, but leave in room to wow. And then something that I learned taking many groups and many nationalities is that groups are different. Nationalities are different. Germans, for example, most of the groups we did not like being over-delivered to. I particularly remember a day when we were driving the bus and somebody called me on the phone and he was like, hey, there's a massive amount of puffins that just arrived. I know like that wasn't supposed to be here for another week, but you can actually go and see them. So we took a detour and we added 50 minutes to the tour. Half of the people on the tour, which were all Germans, complained that this was not in the schedule. So they did not like it. Most other groups actually do like stuff like this, but know your audience. Know your audience, and you can do a surprisingly valuable user research with really low level effort, just by asking a few questions. And humans in general love if we believe somebody's paying attention to us. So if a group shows up or a customer and you can start talking towards something that is specific to them and they realize like, wow, he must know, extra stuff about people from Munchen in Germany, or like he knows the name of our guide, or he knows that we just did this. That creates a connection that will give you an extra room to make mistakes. When selling the experience, there are 3 strong decision points that you can rely on that are used over and over in gaming. One is, does this experience match who I am? We think about ourselves in terms of like, I live a certain lifestyle, I'm a certain character. And when I go on a vacation, I want to go on a vacation that fits my lifestyle and who I am as a character. I'm an adrenaline type, so I want to go on a dangerous vacation that pushes the limits. That is who I am as a character. So the experience, when I'm looking for it, does it match who I am? Is that clear enough in the information you're putting out there? The second point, can I envision the experience, or am I intrigued? And a wonderful example would be like Ása was talking about the images, the videos, the 15-second teasers, but this could also be stuff like mystery. You don't have to give away the cow. It could be like, hey, we have a cave. The cave is ginormous, and at the end of the cave, there is something that 63% of our guests think is rather interesting. We're not going to tell you what it is, but you will also see this and this in the cave, and if you're an adrenaline junkie, you get to jump off a cliff. So, can I envision the experience, or am I intrigued? And the last point, which is obvious to probably everybody, is the utility clear. This actually can be completely skipped if the first 2 steps are strong. I mean, is the utility clear, meaning how much will it cost? How long will this take? What effort do I have to put into this? This is like basic facts, right? But it turns out, for most of us, pricing is a secondary consideration. For what we want, we justify the pricing afterwards. Unless we're super clear that we have a hard monetary limit, most of us will look for what we want and then start looking at financial constraints. So the utility might not even have to be clear if the experience matches who you are and you can envision it, or you're intrigued by it. In other words, we make the decision to buy and then we justify it. The final point I'm going to cover with you guys on preparation is user engagement or customer engagement rises massively if humans believe they're being watched and they're being understood. And I covered this a little bit, but spend time to showcase a little bit of effort. And again, in most cases, this could be done by like a 15-minute Googling work. Like, tell the group, hey, I know stuff about you and I've been preparing for your arrival. Make the group feel like they're unique. This doesn't have to be costly. As soon as the group feels that, they will form a weak, yes, but a personal connection, which will mean that they're willing to lean more into your bosom and trust you for their journey. So then you're in a lot stronger position to frame what is the purpose and meaning of this journey that you're taking with me. So I'm going to stop here. I'm right at my time mark. I'm going to summarize the final points, and I'm going to share my slides so you can see them in case anybody wants to take notes or a screenshot. Let's do it like this. So the experience, you're looking for aiming for raising emotions. You're looking for delivering contrast. You're looking to offer tactile and sensory experience. You're looking to force the brain to visualize in detail. You're looking to clarify the purpose, and don't forget to make them suffer. In the setup, expectation management, offer strong decision points, and know the customer. I think that all of these are extremely reliable lessons we've tested again and again in the video games industry, and I believe they all translate rather easily to the tourist industry. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed and it was useful.
Thank you, Tryggvi Hjaltason from CCP, for a very powerful talk. You certainly over-delivered. Some of the Germans tuned out, actually. They were just... This was very, very good and powerful stuff to think about, not only for the future, but for the present as well. These are key elements to think of in the travel industry. So this concludes our program today. This has been the Icelandic Travel Tech Nordic Edition conference, hosted by the Icelandic Tourism Cluster, represented by Ásta Kristín Sigurjónsdóttir, manager, and also the Icelandic Tourist Board, where Inga Rós Antoniusardóttir has helped and organized this event. And you can be sure that these people are at your service, always, with valuable lessons and advice. Thank you all for being here with us today. It's always a special day to have people in a room together, and those of you that tuned in on online, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next year. Thank you from Gróska here in Vatnsmýri, Reykjavík. Bye-bye.